I told a friend recently that I thought Dead by Daylight was an extremely frustrating experience, especially for killer players, and the response I received was, why? It took me a moment to realize that I didn't have an easy answer. Killer is the power role, right? It's the mode you play when you want to be the big spooky bad guy chasing the scared survivors and hacking them up. Getting at least one kill per match isn't too difficult if you have good perks and a good understanding of your specific killer power. In fact, winning a majority of killer matches isn't too difficult, but it's really frustrating. Why is that? Now, epic DBD gamers who have spent thousands of hours learning every loop and spawn condition might be able to rattle off a whole litany of things they dislike about the game, but I'm not an epic gamer. I'm barely a casual one, and to be super clear, this is one of those opinion videos. I'm not stating anything objective, except that Zarina is the hottest survivor. Fight me, she is. I've been thinking about DBD a lot lately, trying to work out in my head what it is about the game I find so irritating. I think it comes down to one word: powerless. Whether playing as killer or survivor, this game is so good at making you feel powerless. Let me first throw out an olive branch before I get to the complaining part. Yes, this applies just as much to the survivor half of the game. The real reason tunneling is constantly brought up as the most annoying thing in the game is because if you're playing survivor and the killer singles you out, there's almost nothing you personally can do to save yourself unless you've loaded up on anti-tunnel perks beforehand. If you aren't running Decisive Strike, Dead Hard, Unbreakable off the record and the killer decides to focus on you, you're just gonna die. The only counter to tunneling is teamwork, and if your team doesn't work, it's over. Most of my issues with this game concern how it feels to play killer. That doesn't mean I don't understand what it's like on the other end. So, olive branch extended, playing survivor is irritating too. Now, let's hear about the other half. So, why is playing killer frustrating? It's supposed to be the power trip role, right? The survivors can't really hurt you. You have these insane abilities you can trigger, and depending on your build and the map, you can occasionally make the game genuinely unwinnable for the other side, especially if you're willing to play mean. So all of that should mean that playing the killer role is a blast, right? Well, sometimes it is. Other times it makes me want to throw my computer in the trash can. The main weapon survivors have against the killer is called looping. The killer always moves faster than the survivors, so in a straight line, catching up is inevitable. However, the killer is also larger than the survivors, which means if a survivor runs around a building or obstacle in circles and hugs to it as tightly as possible, the killer has to take a slightly wider path than the survivor does, massively extending how long it takes to catch up. Combine that with pallets and windows, which give survivors the ability to gain distance, and with the existence of several speed boost perks that let survivors run very, very fast for brief periods, and a talented survivor player can force you to waste 5 minutes or even more just playing Ring Around the Rosie. This is so effective that when I first started playing, I honestly thought that survivors run faster than the killer by default, because I just couldn't catch up. I still can't sometimes. And this brings me to one of the main causes of frustration. Time is always on the survivor's side. There are 4 survivors, and they can all spawn literally on top of a generator right at the start. Sometimes all 4 survivors spawn right next to a separate generator, which practically ensures that the killer player starts at a disadvantage. By the time I find a survivor, down them, and hook them, 2 or more generators could have been completed. Survivors need to be hooked 3 times in a row before they die. Every second you aren't chasing someone, he's probably working on a generator. This sense of the game slipping away from you the longer it goes on is really annoying. Like, sure, I hooked a guy, but that took me 3 minutes and I didn't see anybody else. That's called losing. I'll never recover from this. It's ruined. Everything is ruined. I often hear the argument that killers win the majority of matches, so why is it frustrating? Because it makes you feel powerless. The hard truth is, winning the game just isn't in your hands as a killer much of the time. It's down to the survivors to make a mistake that you can then pounce on, and that's just not fun. Waiting for another person to slip up isn't fun if the person continues to make the right move over and over again, and nothing you do influences things in any way. Going on long chases creates this building sense of paranoia and a desire to get things done that gets worse and worse the more time you're forced to spend chasing this one guy. And sure, I could just drop the chase. I could just leave and go look for somebody else. But what if that takes another 3 minutes? What if I just can't find anybody? Remember, I am not progressing my objective by chasing. The survivor is. I only progress my objective by getting hooks quickly. Getting hooks slowly means I just lose. And speaking of slow, why does every single killer in this stupid game slow themselves down? I'm serious, they all do. Huntress slows down when aiming a hatchet, after throwing a hatchet, and after putting a hatchet away. Deathslinger slows down when aiming, firing, and reloading. The chainsaw killers slow down when charging. The wraith slows down when uncloaking. The nurse basically stuns herself with every blink. I know the nurse is powerful. That's not the point. No matter which character you play, you are always punished for using your power with a drastic drop in movement speed. You know why Blight and Nurse are so strong? Because they can end chases quickly. So quickly that their respective self-stuns are hardly relevant. Like, yeah, Nurse basically flashbangs herself with every blink, but when those blinks can get you a down in the first 30 seconds, it's a price most people are willing to pay. I still wouldn't say looking at the floor is fun though. Like, just keep the slowdown and remove the stupid head bobble. How hard is that? I don't get motion sickness from playing games, but man, anyone who does cannot play this character. There isn't one specific mechanic in Dead by Daylight that I can point to as the problem. It's a lot of little things. It's the experience of chasing somebody, reaching the shack, and realizing, yeah, I'm just gonna have to leave this person, he's just safe now. It's the experience of chasing the only guy who's dead on hook and having to chew through 3 body blocks in a row, only to watch all 4 of them escape. It's the sound of 2 generators popping back to back 60 seconds into the match. It's the sight of 4 toolboxes and an Eyrie of Crows map offering in the loading screen. It's the feeling of being powerless. And I would argue that this feeling is worse for killer players than survivors for one reason. As a survivor, if you're being tunneled, your team could save you, or at least your team could win without you. If you're playing killer, and you're up against 4 decisive strike players with BNP toolboxes on one of the many way too large maps in this game, you may as well just quit, because you aren't going to win unless they make a mistake, and they won't. I know that doesn't happen every match, but it happens enough to make this game entirely not worth it. Unless you're playing 2v8. I have literally no complaints about 2v8 and will always reinstall DBD for that because it's a blast. Bye!